All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope all is well. My name is Lance Bennett, and I have the privilege of being the president and founder of the People's Institute for the Common Good. Today, we have our Lunch and Learn series in good company. And our topic today is power and policy, what's at stake for us all. And so we're glad that you have chosen to spend your time with us today in this space of learning, connection, and reflection. Before we get started, there's just a few housekeeping reminders I want to make sure that we all know and understand. Today's session is being recorded, and so this allows us to share the learning with others who were not able to make it live today. If you prefer to not be seen on camera, you can feel free to turn your camera off. Mute your mic. Please keep your microphone on mute unless you're invited to speak. If this helps to minimize background noise and to ensure that we all can hear the speaker clearly. In terms of chat, the chat will be open during today's conversation, and so feel free to drop in your comments and your questions throughout the hour. Um, Throughout today, we also have a question and answer session, and so we ask that you just use the raise your hand feature as you would like to speak, so that way we can just kind of keep an order of who raised their hand. In terms of respect, please enjoy this hour. Show up with curiosity, care, and a community spirit. And then finally, as recognition for today's time, you will receive a digital badge for 1 hour of professional learning and development. Digital badges are a form of credentialing that allowed you to showcase your learning on platforms such as LinkedIn. And so after the session today, you will receive an email with your digital badge and step-by-step instructions for how to share it on LinkedIn and with your professional network. And so that is all for our housekeeping today. Today's speaker is Cimajie Best, who is a public policy strategist and community leader. And so we are excited to have her here today, and we definitely appreciate her for taking time out of her busy schedule to join us. Cimajie Best is a trusted advisor to clients facing highly publicized public affairs challenges, public relations opportunities, political elections, and landmark fundraising campaigns. Her expertise guides clients' winning strategies with government affairs, media messaging, and community outreach. As a skilled tactician in capacity building training and stakeholder management, she is a strong racial equity advocate and program evaluator. Samaji works with nonprofits, foundations, elected officials, and communities to create inclusive outcomes for all parties involved. Having launched programs for organizations such as the State Fair of Texas and the Texas Women's Foundation, she's a staunch advocate for collaborations, partnerships, and a collective impact approach to producing lasting change in communities. Samaji currently serves on the boards of the Future of Texas, the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas, and the Arts and Culture Commission for the City of Dallas. She is a SVP Dana Jewett resident alum, a former Community Foundation of Texas emerging leader and philanthropy fellow, as well as an Obama Foundation community leader alumni. She holds a bachelor's degree in philosophy and Africana studies from Louisiana State University, as well as a certificate in social entrepreneurship from Oxford. And so, without further ado, please welcome Samaji Best. Samaji, thank you so much again for your time. Excited to learn from you. And so, feel free to jump right in.
Thank you so much for having me and thank y'all for coming. I want this to be conversational in as much as it can be. So please, like if you have questions while I'm in the moment, stop and ask me because I think that's easier than waiting till the end, especially when we're talking about policy and things of that nature. So yeah, let's talk about the things. I know Dr. Bennett asked some questions that he wanted to start with, and so Dr. B, if you want to kick me off with the first question, we can do it that way, or I can just read them, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, that works. It works. So the first question that I really wanted to just learn from you is, when you think about public policy, one, what does that mean to you? And two, how does it impact you and the lives of others on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I'm a bookworm, and so when I think about the actual term of public policy, right, we get the word public from the Latin word publicus, which means of the people. And so when I think about public policy, I mean policy, I think of policy that is of the people or for the people. Um, I think unfortunately, we have gotten away from politics and policy being of and for the people, and we think of it as this thing that's so far removed from us, when in actuality, it shapes every single thing that we do in our daily lives, from the time we wake up from in our homes to where we're able to live, to the cars that we drive, to the price of gas, to the tax base, to our schools and everything in between. And so I really want people to be able to connect the dots on how public policy shapes their everyday life, not just during, presidential election cycles, not just during congressional elections, but even down to the dog catcher, right? All of those things, every single election affects you more than you think.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that it's so important to have people understand that, like, yeah, everything that we vote for or not vote for in certain elections uh, definitely impacts everything on a daily basis, right?
Exactly.
And so we have folks on here mostly from Texas. We have
Okay.
some other folks from other states, but just just thinking about policies that have gone through this legislative cycle. What federal and state policies have recently gone through the cycle that you feel didn't get enough public attention? And so why do you feel like they fell under the radar?
Yeah. So I think I laugh because I think there are two ways to answer your question. A lot of stuff that's happening at a federal level right now is not actually going through any type of process. It's just being mandated, right? It's just being written through executive order. Um, our current president has passed more executive orders than the past two presidents combined. So just food for thought on that. And so I think the most recent thing that we've seen, right, is the big beautiful bill. And that was done through something called the reconciliation process. The reconciliation process was implemented during the Nixon administration, kind of as a way of checks and balances, as another form of checks and balances within our government. It was only to be used to lower the national debt. I want to say that again. It was only to be used in instances to lower the national debt. And so the way reconciliation works is that a president can invoke it. And when they invoke it, they no longer have to have the minority party's consent, right? They don't have to have those votes. It can just be the majority party and they can move forward. Presidents in the past have used it. Obama used it to get part of his Obamacare package done. Biden used it to get part of his environmental act done. But the thing is, our previous presidents have been more sentient in that they consult with folks wiser than them on how and why they should use that, right? And unfortunately, that's not what we're seeing. And so that is what's happening at a federal level. Checks and balances are kind of non existent at this point. And Congress is just kind of rolling over and bending to the will of our commander in chief. Now, has he legally broken any laws? No. And unfortunately, these safeguards weren't put in place because predecessors and forefathers thought that we would always have someone in office who was willing to compromise, who was willing to listen, who truly had the will of the people in mind. Again, unfortunately, that's not where we are right now. And so that's why we are seeing things just kind of fly off the rails at a state level. And that's where I do most of my work. We just concluded the 89th legislative session. Actually, Lance, do you have that graphic?
Yes, I do. I do.
Can you share that if possible?
Sure, I have it over text from when
Let
we were
me see. One
Do
second,
you have
y'all.
it on your thing?
Yeah, one second. I'm going to share the screen. And while I'm sharing this, I'll talk to you. So I'm not looking at you guys, but I promise I'm working for you guys.
Okay.
The 89th legislative session just concluded. There were about 8,700 bills that were filed. Um, of that 8,700, about 1,200 actually made it to the governor's desk. Uh, I can share my screen. I may need you to give me access to share my screen, Lance. Oh, no, one second. I think I can. Can you guys see that?
Yep, we're good. We're good.
Okay, cool. And we'll use this as kind of the guide for this conversation. So you can see 8,700 bills were filed. about 2,700 resolutions. And of those 1,100, about almost 1,200 made it to the governor's desk for him to sign into law. He recently called a special second session. And so we'll be going back down to Austin because he wants to cover things like, excuse me, abortions, taxes again, because that was one of his big priorities. But the GOP is touting this, and this is a direct quote, as the most conservative and most successful session in Texas history. That's important to know because if you know what conservative priorities are, then you'll kind of know how this session went, right? And so, to your question of things that went under the radar, my two things that I've been telling people to watch more than anything else are the investment in the water structure, which is the first thing, and that came in the form of SB 7 and House Joint Resolution 7, which establishes a fund for Texas water. That is important because demographers and scientists project that in the next 20 years, Texas will be in a water shortage, not by a couple 100,000, but by a couple of million. So that means they think that millions of people could be without fresh water in Texas within the next few years. This is directly correlated to one, our growing population, but two, our growing AI boom here. Where as we speak, several AI facilities are being built here, and it takes a lot of water to run AI facilities. We have to continually cool the machines, and there are these huge machines that pull thousands and thousands and thousands of watts of energy daily. I'm talking about enough energy to power an entire town. And so, in order to cool those down, they have to use fresh water, and that's where this water shortage will come from. And so, there is a saying, right? When Black people or people furthest from justice, when America gets the cold, people from furthest from justice get the flu. And so I want people to watch that because water is essential to life. And though it's not being talked about as a hot button issue right now, it will be in 20 years when we're out of water. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to is the bail reform. It's a little bit further down the list. And that came in the form of SB 9, SB 40, and Senate Joint Resolution 5. Those three are important because we already have a cash bail system in Texas, which means if you do not have the money to pay, you will sit in jail until your court date. That means you could be in jail for years, up to 2 years, waiting for your court date, innocent or guilty, right? And so SB 9 restricts who is eligible for release on recognizance bonds, what they're called cashless bonds, and allows the state to appeal or deny those. SB 40 bans taxpayer or nonprofit funding for bail. And so think about nonprofits like Project Innocence, who operate arms in Texas and across the country. They would no longer be able to contribute to the bail of people if they know they're innocent. Um, and then SJR 5 will require judges to deny bail for certain offenders. This one is actually going to be on the ballot come November. And so there's still a chance that that may not go all the way through, but it is proposed. And because of the majority, I'm thinking that it's going to pass. And so bail reform and water infrastructure are two things I think people should really pay attention to for many reasons, right? But because it's going to disproportionately affect Black and Brown people and those furthest from justice.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, especially with the water. A few weeks ago, I watched an interview on 60 Minutes, um, with the reporter was emailing or not emailing, excuse me, having a conversation with one of the leaders from OpenAI and how they're trying to build a factory in Abilene, Texas.
Mhm.
And so they were saying that, their strategy for the water usage was to pump 1 million gallons into their system that, according to them, doesn't have to be replenished. In other words, it's a
Yeah.
1 million gallons that just continues to go, 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 and go. Um, and so I found that interesting because, in some ways, it's like, well, look, this is a rural town, a small town that that doesn't have a lot of just economic opportunities. People are struggling in that area.
Yeah.
Then this town, that this company comes to this place to try to advance its own agenda. and some people are buying it, other people are not. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, that water usage will be a major thing for that community.
It matters and it's already happening. There are several articles. I'll actually drop one into the chat from the New York Times. There's a small city in Georgia. It's like Newton or maybe in Newton County, Georgia, where they built the AI facility, and within the next few weeks, people turned on their faucet and nothing was coming out. Like this is not, it's not a joke. It's not like oh, this could happen. No, it's already actively happening. And as people continue to move here, as honestly Texas becomes more red, if that's even possible, and our commander in chief's best friend moves all his operations here. Many people don't know, but Elon Musk he's actually chartered an entire city. It's called Starplex, Star something. Yeah, well, it will be an entire town of people who work for Tesla. The entire city is made up of Tesla employees. There will be a mayor. They will have elections, all that jazz, and it's just for Tesla employees. And so, as those kind of things continue to happen, this will only be exacerbated further. And it's not like we're already doing great by the environment. So, yeah,
Yeah, and so that's so fascinating because this kind of leads me to just my next question, but also just thinking about so the purposes of this program in good company as well as the institute and how we can create a better society. Uh, and so in what ways do you see policies reflecting the values of our society and whose values those tend to be popularized?
yeah. I think unfortunately the policies that we're seeing coming down, especially at a federal level, absolutely reflect the values of American society. America is a business. That's how it was started. It was the capitalism runs through our veins, right? That is the way you do everything here. Even the most do good people, right, that live in America still have to make money, still have to pay for everything. And so there's always going to be this. And I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm sitting in SMU, and so I think the class just let out. Um, Even the most do-good among us, right, we're a part of the rat race, and we're trying to figure out like, well, I got to make money to stay afloat. I got to make money to pay for this and pay for that and pay for that. And so, back to the big beautiful bill. The big beautiful bill is Reaganomics. It is Ronald Reagan's 1981 Reaganomics: less government control, less income tax, so I have more money in my pocket, bigger tax breaks for the rich, less safety nets, less spending on the poor and those who actually need it, and more money to those who already have it and the investors. And so, when we look at bills like that, when we look at the regulations that the EPA is rolling back, as far as fracking goes, as far as clean air goes, that isn't all to benefit oil and gas companies, their pockets and their money. When we look at RFK and the Health Administration and their rollbacks on regulations for the CDC and the FDA, again, all to benefit big pharma. And so I think it's very in line, unfortunately, with America was built on the premise of God, gold, and glory. God got lost a long time ago. And we're still on the search for that glory and that gold. I think that's what we're seeing overwhelmingly today.
Yeah, yeah. I really like how you said about God, golden glory,
Yeah.
because I laugh because even today, even some people in some political persuasions believe that this is a Christian nation, and they will continue to use those terms quite a bit in daily language, um, and so yeah, I find it fascinating, quite frankly, how that is, continue to be perpetuated, even though we have things and policies that don't benefit the people, uh,
Yeah,
designed to benefit corporations. And indeed, America is a business, like you said.
it is.
Yeah.
And I also think the other thing is that and I use they capital T for the government and those in charge, have done a really good job at separating democracy from the people.
Mm.
Again, a nerd, and so the word democracy, the root word of that is demos, which is Greek for people, right? And so I think
people, I won't say forget. I think they just don't know how because again, they're part of the rat race and they're just trying to maintain day to day. I think it's about you at the end of the day. All the people in that big White House, all the people in the Congress, all the people down in Austin, they're there to serve you. That is your office. That is your house. That is your place. And so you got to make your voice heard. You have to tell them what you want. And you can't be bashful about it. You can't be shy about it because they're not going to be shy about what they want when they're advocating for their wants and needs. And I think we just have to come to a point where we say enough is enough. When I referenced the big beautiful bill being much like Reaganomics, when Reagan was trying to pass his reform back in the 80s, he was met with much dissent. They were protesting in the streets, outside of his house, outside of the White House, outside of Congress. They were everywhere protesting this. Honestly, what actually saved him and the bill was the assassination attempt on his life, right? Somebody tried to assassinate him. He goes down, he survives it. Now he's this big national hero. He's this, larger than life figure, and his bill goes through. But without that, the people were pushing back. I think back then we were though we have much more access to each other now, we're much more siloed. If I asked on this call of 20 people right now, how many people know their neighbors' names? Over half of you wouldn't. And that's not a dig, that's just a fact. That's a fact of life of how we live. America is a very individualistic country. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you do everything by yourself. So when you go home, you go in your house and live your life with your family. Well, back in the day, everybody needed each other in a different way than they do now. And so I think and we may get into this a little later, but part of what we need to do is go back to community. Yes, I know we're all concerned about what's happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but truthfully, what's going to hit you most and hardest is what's happening at 1500 Maria if you live in Dallas, that city hall, or at 1601 Capitol, which is the address for the Capitol in Washington. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, sorry, bit
No,
of a
that was
rant.
perfect. That was perfect. And I think what's fascinating is so what you mentioned about just sort of the rat race and time and ability to be able to connect with our neighbors, connect within community. That actually speaks to our previous Lunch and Learn last month, which you all can go back on YouTube on our YouTube page and find it. It was with Dr. Donna Ballard, professor from University of Texas at Austin. She studies time and communication, and a lot of her conversation was about how our society doesn't construct, it's not constructed in a way that allows us to do anything besides go to work. And so, yeah, and I think that connects directly to Samaji, what you're saying about how that informs how we engage in the political process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have the time, ability, and access to know and to get information and to be informed, that weakens our democracy. Is what I hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And feel free to put your questions and your comments in the chat. And so one other question I wanted to ask you, Samaji, about again, so we talked about a couple of different policies that have been passed, both at the federal level and at the state level. And so if you could revise one policy, just one. Now I know it might be quite a
Ooh.
few, but just one for today. If you could revise one public policy that would benefit your community, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's so hard. Um, that's a really good question, though. Probably, probably the GI Bill. And I say the GI Bill because so when we go back to World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, um, when Black men came home, they were denied access. Many of them were overwhelmingly denied access to the GI Bill. But the GI Bill truly was transformational in the American middle class, what we know today as the American middle class. Most of us are not most of us, all of us are the descendants of boomers, whether that be directly as parents or grandparents or whatever. And many of them were able to do the things they do and set up their life the way they were able to set it up because of the GI Bill. when Black veterans were shut out of it, the promise of home loans, the promise of tuition assistance, the promise of jobs and benefits training went out the door. When that went out the door, that left many of them desolate. It left them unable to provide, it left their families broken. Um, and for example, today in Dallas, the point in time count in January saw we had about 3,500 unhoused individuals living in Dallas County, in the city of Dallas. Of those 3,500, 57% were Black men. 57% of the 3,500 unhoused people in Dallas are Black men. Of that 57%, over 60% were veterans. So when we talk about like resources, when we talk about the nuclear family and what the nuclear family means, generational wealth and accomplishment, um, I think going back and amending how the GI Bill was allocated would have been truly transformational in seeing it play out differently for Black Americans in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that's some interesting data too, because yeah, I mean, when you think about who was again given access to different resources over the course of time, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's clear that not everyone has had an equal share in that. And so what we're going to do right now is take a little bit of a 5 minute break.
Okay.
And so in the meantime, so what I want to share with you all is a way to keep supporting our organization. And so you can support our work by scanning the QR code here. And so that'll lead you to our page. And so in the meantime, feel free to put your questions as well in the chat. And so when we come back, we'll have more of a little bit of a community discussion. And so at that time, you can feel free to unmute your mic, turn your camera on, and feel free to participate. And so we'll see you back in about 3 minutes. Thanks. All right. Thank you all so much again for the time and for allowing us to have this conversation today. So there are a couple of questions in the chat so far that we see. So for the first one is from Kennedy, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Do you think more people like Zoran Mamdani can bring people back to community instead of this extreme individualistic thinking in American politics and society?
That's my hope, right? Um, so before I get into that, America is very young as a country, right? America is not even 250 years old yet. And when we think about societies that we're in business with, whether it be China or France or Japan, whomever, we have a lot of growing to do, a lot of learning to do. And we're in a cycle. And I think it seems like, oh my God, the world is ending. This is so vicious, but this has happened before and will happen again. Full stop. Let me start there. So to your actual question, um, I hope so, but I also know that even some of his policies, even some of Iran's policies, are a little left leaning for the more moderate folks. And so, what I think we're really going to need to see is the moderate Dems and the moderate Rs getting in a room and saying, okay, what can you flex on? What can't you flex on? What do you absolutely have to have? And what can you do without? I think we're going to need to see um, the John McCain's, God rest his soul, of the Republican Party, and the Barack Obama's, for lack of another example, of the Democratic Party to come to the table and really be willing to lay it all out. I also think what we're going to need to see is the Democratic Party changing their strategy, right? In 2024, they relied very, very heavily on a couple of key button issues that lost them the election, not just at the top. The election at the top was lost, in my opinion, because she was a Black woman, and I will never say anything different. But down the ballot, right, the conversation was a lot about these very, very hot button issues that didn't necessarily have to be about that the entire time. And I think we're going to have to come back to the middle to see us get anywhere in this country. It used to be, and I've worked in politics for a very long time, that Dems and Rs could argue all day on the floor and then leave and go have a drink together because at the end of the day, we're still trying to work towards the good of the people. It's come to such that both sides are deeply entrenched. Both sides are mudslinging. Um, one side is a little more wild than the other. Lance, I'm trying not to wild out on your Zoom, but you know what I want to say. One side tripping, and the other side is not playing their cards well. They're not playing their cards well, and so it's going to take us coming back to the middle and flexing on some things. And I don't know, I don't know quite yet how we do that. I loved that um, he toppled, and I always pronounce his name wrong, which is why I'm not saying it now because I don't want to get it wrong. He says it a different way than most other people say it, and that with a name like Cimajie, names are very important to me. And so until I can get it right, I'm not going to say it. But I was so glad to see him topple an institution in what is the Como, regime, and that is a stride. But there are also New Yorkers who are like, "I'm leaving because he's here now," and so we're not quite out of the woods yet.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating because I think there are a lot of different perspectives on what Democrats should do moving forward. Some people
Yep.
suggest that they should go more left, just like how the Republicans have gone more right. But then there's other folks who say we need more centrist politics.
Mhm.
So just kind of a follow-up to this question, what do you think is the best strategy for Democrats to, one, articulate their vision for America, and two, um, just as a party overall, go left, go further left, or be more centrist.
Articulate their vision was the second thing. What was the first thing you said?
Um, it's a good question. I didn't forgot what I said. Uh, articulate their vision and ultimately just figure out if they need to go either further left or
Or
way more centrist.
um, so when it comes to articulating the vision, One, the Democratic Party does not have strong leadership. That has been an issue for a very long time. Obama, since the Obama years, really post him. And what we're quite truthfully, what we're living in now is the wave effect of the audacity of America to elect a black man twice. Okay, that we're living in that backlash. And so since Obama left, the party had been trying to figure out what to do. The first misstep after Obama was electing Joe Biden. And I'll say that if I ever meet him, that was the first misstep. And I say that because at, I think at the time he was 72, 71, something like that. He was already double the age of over half of America. So you're already not connecting with your base. You already live in a different time, talk a different way, come first misstep. Second misstep, this last go round was then putting up, and in some ways it was all they could do because she was the VP, but in other ways it was a horrible move because America was never going to elect a woman, and let alone a black one. And that just put us further down the charts. It's an unfortunate fact in politics that we oftentimes don't get to elect the person that we want. We have to elect the person who can beat the other guy. And that's what happens when you have a two-party system like we do. I'm of the opinion that the two-party system is very antiquated and that we need to shift. I actually think what may come of our current president's tenure is that we may start to move towards a multi-party system, which would completely change the way, right, America is set up in the way we do politics, which would be great. Um, so yeah, so I think one, we need to establish leadership and a plan. Now, what that plan should be, in my opinion, is moving back towards the middle. And moving back towards the middle in a way that does not leave anybody behind, but it recognizes that everybody is not on our side. Everybody's not on this side of the line. And that's okay. Like, we don't need everybody on this side of the line. What we need is everybody to be taken care of. What we need is everybody to be able to feed their children. What we need is everybody to have access to a quality education. What we need is everybody to have access to quality grocery stores. That is what we need. And in order to do that, we're going to have to, again, bring it back in a little bit and scale it down.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a real good strategy. Yeah, being able to show people use the term of like getting people under the tent,
Yeah.
right? And having more people and more ideologies and perspectives represented under that tent for
Yeah.
Democrats. I think would be also an effective strategy. Sam had a question specifically at the state level. The legislature continues to attempt and pass laws that are unpopular with special interest groups that might not be linked naturally. Are you seeing any unexpected coalitions by state lawmakers to push back against negatively impactful bills in the special session or in the future?
Um, Coalitions by lawmakers or special interest groups, I'm sorry, or either.
I guess either would be cool. Oh,
Sam.
Sam, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, either really. You know, what comes to mind is like the DART bill that we saw a lot of people come together on, or like bond reform.
Yeah. Sam, do I know you in real life?
Yes.
Okay, when I saw your face, I was like, I know him. Um, hey, hi. So as you guys know, I do government relations for DART, and like Sam said, defeating HB 3187 was a gargantuan feat, and it took us bringing together our businesses in Plano, from State Farm and Toyota to our constituents down in Glen Heights and everybody in between to make that happen down in Austin. I think the biggest and most surprising one that I've seen and I was very excited about was the connection between the hemp special interest groups and veterans. In the past, probably 5 to 8 years, they've been using Delta 8 and hemp to treat PTSD. in our veterans. And because of that, the veterans have become staunch advocates for first CBD, THC, I mean, Delta 8 and CBD, but eventually for, full legalization of marijuana and kind of seeing that because what you see are these guys who are historically like very buttoned up, very tight, very like, I didn't touch marijuana until I did this, locked arms with like the hippies who've been smoking their kneecaps off since college. And it's like, wow, look at this. This is what democracy is about. This is great. Um, and so I've loved to kind of watch that play out. Um, when it comes to reproductive justice, what I've seen a lot is you have like the Planned Parenthoods and the ALCUs partnering with other health interest groups, specifically doctors and nurses, excuse me, and interstate organizations, because the interstate organizations are the way that people are having to travel to get these abortions in other states where they can't, normally stay, where they can't get them in their home states. And so that's another one that was very surprising to see them come together, but glad that they were. Um, when it comes to the representatives themselves, so we have 130 state representatives and 31 senators, majority Republican. The probably, I want to make sure I don't misspeak when I say this. The sales tax, I mean, not the sales tax, the income tax caps was probably the most surprising um, kind of coalition that I saw between Dems and Rs. Um, just because some of the Ds kind of were toeing the line and saying one thing before session, and then when session started singing a different tune. Um, on the DART front, we weren't really able to garner any support from the Rs. That wasn't surprising to us though, because we're in an administration that really doesn't value public good or public services. So that wasn't surprising to us. Um, I mean, I think that's the same for healthcare and education and pretty much across the board. This was a very typical, I'll say, legislative session in that everybody voted how you thought they were going to vote. There were a few, now I will say, there are a few um, Republican representatives who worked with us behind the scenes who said, I don't want to have to deal with this in Austin. I think you should guys should solve this at home, or I think we should handle this at a federal level or whatever. However, because they were fearful of being called rhinos, Republican in name only, they wouldn't speak out publicly about that. And that's when true harm is done, right? There's a quote by Albert Einstein that says, the world won't end because of so many evil people. The world will end because of all the good people who stand around and do nothing. And so we have these people who know what's happening is not right, who have the power to do something, but for fear of losing that power, if they say something, choose to, toe the party line and keep in lockstep with what's happening. And so that's honestly the biggest thing that I saw happening in the legislature this session.
Yeah, that's pretty impactful. One, I haven't heard the term rhino in a couple of years. I haven't.
It's back.
I thought they got away with it. Uh, I mean, I feel like people just haven't been using it as much is because like there's been so much more division over the
Mm-hmm.
couple of years. There have been only a few Republicans wanting to go over with the Democrats' support. So I feel like the term just kind of became extinct by virtue of
I think at a federal level, because there's this zeitgeist right now of either you're with me or against me at a
mm,
federal level, that has trickled down to our governor, which has trickled down to our state house, to the speaker of the house and the whip leaders. And so again, for fear of being either voted out of like the Ways and Means Committee, which is one of the most powerful committees, or appropriation, which is again another powerful committee, they would rather just say nothing than say what they know is right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Chelsea has a question. She said that Representative John Boosie's bill to overturn the harmful DEI cuts is stalled in the legislative process. What can advocates, students, and community members do to help move legislation like this forward when it is stuck? What does it actually take to push these bills out of committee and onto the floor?
So a lot of the times, there are a couple different things probably happening with this bill. One, there are lobbyists there who are trying to stall it out. We're actively asking people to move slow, to not, because y'all gotta understand, we're living in 2025. Our government is living in 1980. Okay. And you have to physically walk policies over and put them on a desk for somebody to stamp them, who physically walks them back to somebody else. And so there are 100 different ways to get a bill stalled if you want or need it, right? You can call the calendars person and be like, hey, maybe this is at the bottom of the pile, if that's your friend and you built an ally, or you call somebody, or you call the chair of whatever committee it's in and say, hey, I know this bill has come to you. We don't really care about this, so you shouldn't either. And so that's happening in the background of that. What constituents can always do, call and email your representatives. You don't think they read them, but they do, especially the emails, because then there's a digital record of you being of it happening, right? Um, Secondarily, use social media to raise awareness. And oftentimes, people accuse young people of being like Twitter warriors or Instagram warriors, and some of them are, but also shaming works. Let me repeat that. Shame still works. And so when I can't appeal to your better angels, if you don't have any better angels, then shame. I can't tell you how many times during this legislative session, the conversation was, especially when it pertains to public transit, dang, you're going to vote for this bill that's going to disenfranchise 100,000 people in your district? I wonder if the news knows that. I wonder if the news knows that you just got a new Bentley, but you don't care that the grandmother in your district isn't going to be able to get to her doctor's appointment at the VA. It would be a shame if people found that out, wouldn't it? And so using, again, when you can't do it the nice way, when you can't draw people with honey, sometimes you got to use vinegar. And so, honestly, calling them out on their bullshit, calling them to the carpet, because again, that office belongs to you. They are there because you voted them in, or somebody in your district voted them in. And so making sure that they are held accountable every single day, because that is their job every single day, to be there working for you. So if they're not there working from you, call them out. That's the only way it happens.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I was listening to an episode of my favorite podcast, Hidden Brain, a couple of months ago. And the episode was really about like how do we appeal to people who, from a values-based perspective, right? And so oftentimes it's difficult with someone who has the opposite values as you trying to approach them with, hey, with the good values
Yeah.
that oftentimes doesn't work. Instead, what the psychologist suggested was kind of doing what you're doing, what you said, Samaji, of holding up a mirror and saying, is this really the way that you want to be? Is this the path that you really want to go down?
Yeah.
And so, so that definitely works, and I can definitely see that as working here too.
And to your point about values, right? And using an example of us in the legislative and the session again, knowing your audience is very important, right? And so when I'm going to talk to a Republican representative from the North, I'm not going to talk to them about how this is going to disproportionately impact um, those in poverty, the young, the old, the elderly, the furthest from justice, because that's not their top priority. Not saying they don't care, but it's not their top priority. What I'm going to talk to them about is the fact that transit brings economic development, because I know economic development is very important to them. I'm going to tell them that whenever a Fortune 500 company looks at what cities they're going to move to, the second thing they consider after the landmass being able to support their headquarters is, does this place have public transit? And so if we want the Goldman Sachs of the world and the Boeings of the world and the McKessons of the world to continue to move to North Texas, then we need to have an adequate public transit system that appeals to them. If I'm in Southern Dallas with my Democratic reps, I might talk about the disproportionate impact to minorities and those below the poverty line because that's the majority of their constituents. So they care about that because that's who's keeping them in office. And so, again, knowing what's important to your person is very important.
And so, other words, the only thing that some people care about is money, right?
Oh, yeah, the America runs on it.
And that's
Capitalism.
yeah, and that's what they understand, right? And
Yeah.
so knowing your audience and being able to speak to them in the appropriate way, I think makes sense. Tim has a question. I'm not from Texas. What are some good resources that you would recommend that will help me stay on top of public policy news and updates in the state?
Ooh. Um, Something as basic as setting a Google alert for the things that you're looking for. So what I tell people is like the goal is not to do everything, to know everything, to be the expert in every piece of legislation that comes out. The goal is to do what you can, where you can, for who you can, for as long as you can. And so if your thing is education, set a Google alert for education policy Texas. If your thing is environment policy Texas, whatever that thing is. The other thing that you can do is go on, I think it's called legiscan.com, and you can set an alert for bills that come up with certain keywords. So if you know there are certain things that you want to watch for, again, education, environment, LGBTQ rights, taxes, hospitals, whatever that is, abortions, you can set an alert, and every single bill that has one of those words in it will come directly to your inbox. Um, exactly. Thank you. And that's very helpful. That's something that I use almost daily. I use that one, and then there's one for Congress for the federal stuff. Um, I read my, or at least scan the Texas Monthly as much as I can of the politics session monthly, because they're pretty good at being middle of the road. I have my concerns, but they're pretty good at being middle of the road when it comes to reporting on issues. Um, and then just looking at your local beat writers that cover politics. And I mean, you can always also DM me. My DMs are open.
Yeah, yeah. And so like kind of a follow-up question to Tim's question. Some people, say, well, I try not watching the news because I don't want to get caught up in the echo chamber of, the information being leaning one way or another. I don't want to watch MSNBC and I don't want to watch Fox or I don't want to watch CNN because I feel like I'm not getting the full version of
Mhm.
the story. And so as it pertains to live news, what is your suggestion for making sure that folks, stay involved?
I tell people all the time that not watching the news is a luxury Americans don't have. You don't have the luxury to not watch the news. If you want a balanced view, watch both. Watch Fox News and then turn on CNN or whatever it takes. But you have to know. Full stop. Like you to walk around this place in ignorance is not bliss, it's danger, quite literally. When there's so much happening every single day. To supplement those stations, what I also do is watch Al Jazeera, which is out of Istanbul. I watch TRT World, which is out of Qatar, I believe. So just to see what's going on that side of the world, TRT and Al Jazeera are both great, specifically when we're talking about like what's happening in Gaza and in Israel and Palestine, because you're never going to get the full picture from American news ever. They're never going to tell us exactly what they're doing because we would be in the streets. We should be in the streets now, but that's another story for another day. So I try to watch news outlets from around the world that help have a completely different perspective. I actually just got back from a two week trip to the East. I was in Japan and Bali and Singapore, and every single time somebody realized I was American, they asked what I thought about our president and about everything that was happening and about tariffs. Like, so they know exactly what's going on over here. Can you say that you know what's going on over there? Can you say that you're aware of what's happening in China or Japan or wherever? Did you know they just had like 100-year flood in Japan that like almost wiped out half the island? We are, because of our geography and intention, but specifically our geography, we are so self-contained in America. We all speak one language, we all watch the same news, but that is not how the rest of the world operates. The rest of the world is very in tune with everyone else, and I think we need to be too.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, as we close today's session, we want to extend a deep and sincere thank you to
Yeah.
Cimajie Best for sharing her time, her wisdom, and her perspective with us. So this was such a great and powerful discussion for all of us to learn, and so we appreciate all y'all for being here, and thank y'all for showing up. We wanted just to give you some more information about upcoming sessions. August 12th, we have Dr. Mary Beth Gassman. She's a distinguished professor at Rutgers University, and she also leads the Center for Minority Serving Institutions and the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Institute for Leadership, Equity, and Justice. She will be talking about her book, HBCUs, the Power of Historically Black Colleges and Universities. For September, we have Professor Leah Lippman from she's a law professor at the University of Michigan and New York best time-selling author. She'll be talking about her book called Lawless that just came out. And so we are excited to have her here for that. And she was on The Daily Show a couple of weeks ago. So it's good to have her. For October, we just booked October. This is Dr. Karita Brown from Emory University. She'll be talking about her book, The Battle for the Black Mind. And so if you follow us on social media, you will be able to see all of our updates and stay in touch with us, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can see all of our updates on through our newsletter as well. And so again, if you appreciated today's session and would like to support our work, we welcome any donations. These events are for the public, but they are not free to produce, and so your tax deductible contributions can help us continue to offer accessible, high quality learning experiences for the community. And finally, check your email after the session. You will receive your digital badge recognizing today's session for your professional development, instructions on how to share your badge via LinkedIn, and a brief feedback survey for us. So please take a moment to complete that survey. Your thoughts will help us to continue to grow and improve each session. If you have any questions or need anything, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.